So today we are interviewing Katharina Houy. Thank you very much for being here with me and talk a little bit about yourself, your profession within the performing arts industry. So first of all, what's your profession in this kind of industry?
Hi, so my profession in the arts industry, I'm a freelance stage manager and I work in theatre and events, and I've worked in a lot of different genres like opera and circus, dance or straight drama, pretty much anything you can think of. That's me.
Thank you very much. That sounds amazing because usually when you think about performing arts, oh, singers, musicians, actors. No, actually, there's people behind the scenes, stage manager. So, first of all, what made you choose this career and how did you get into it?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I suppose I grew up with a lot of art at home. So my mum used to be a ballet dancer, my dad's a trumpet player. So I grew up surrounded by dance and music, really. There was always music playing in our house, and I remember always being taken to concerts and to see operas as a kid. So that was always really exciting. So I was always kind of involved in the arts, and then after I left school, I realised I really wanted to keep staying involved in the arts. So I ended up studying in London. I studied stage management and technical theatre, and ended up being a stage manager, and have worked as a stage manager as a freelancer ever since.
And what are the greatest challenges for a freelancer?
Well, I suppose I can only answer as a freelance stage manager, but for me, one of the greatest challenges is that obviously you're always looking for work. As soon as you get one contract, you're already thinking about the next contract and where that's going to come from. You never have any kind of financial stability that you can count on unless you suddenly get a contract that lasts for 6 months when you think you've hit the jackpot. But yes, I mean, of course, the more you work, the more contacts you build up, and the more regular your work is going to be. But yes, it does take a lot of work to constantly stay on top of that and constantly try and find your next contract.
And after the challenges, what are the greatest satisfactions of this job?
I suppose my favorite thing about being freelance is you can always say no to something. If you get offered a contract which just sounds horrific, I don't know, if the people are weird, or if you have to travel 2 hours to get there, or if you get paid nothing but they promise you something strange like, I don't know, future contracts, or maybe the box office will make a plus. You can just look at that and go, no, that's way too much work for no pay at all, and who knows how I'll feel afterwards. So it's great to have that option to be able to say, no, I'm my own boss. I can say yes or no whenever I want. And I suppose the other plus is that you meet so many different types of crazy people, whether it's performers or the creative team or anyone backstage. Especially when you work with someone more than once, you do end up building up a really trustworthy foundation, I suppose. You know how the other person works, you know how you can best work together, and it's very satisfying meeting new people that you then end up being on the same wavelength with.
And with your experience, what would you change about the industry?
Oh, hard to limit it to one thing. I think there's a lot of things that have potential to be changed for the better. I think one of the biggest problems is definitely still, it's a universal one, not just for this industry. I think childcare is the number one right now for me. I kind of look at it and go, I don't know how I would combine this job with having a family, which is why I think a lot of people in this industry get to a certain age and then decide to go for safer jobs or decide to quit the industry altogether. And I think a lot of that could be helped if there was a better system in place when it comes to childcare or childminding in general. That's probably the first one I can think of right now.
And if you had the chance to give an advice to a younger yourself, or however a young person approaching this career, what would you suggest to that person?
Several things. For starters, keep an open mind. You never know where your next job is going to come from. You never know whether the person sitting next to you at opening night could be your next employer. Also, get some good advice about your tax returns and generally your financials. I think it's really important to stay on top of that and know where your assets are and know what you need to look after. Because those are things that we easily ignore and that we forget about because we're so focused on just getting the show up or just being the best performer we can be. But actually, then you go home and realize you can't pay the rent. These are things that we all have to keep on top of. And especially as freelancers, we have to think about them because no one else will do that for us. You are your own manager. You are your own boss. You need to be on top of all of that.
Related to that, I have two questions. One is serious, the other one is not. So let's go for the serious one. Related to the freelance job, do you see some kind of flexibility? So people that maybe don't make it to be performers on the stage and then they decide to be behind the scenes or vice versa?
I think there's definitely some flexibility. The one thing I'd say is that you have to think about your motivation behind that kind of thing. So if you want to simply be part of the arts industry and you're not too fussed as to which area, then great. Then you can probably jump from one area to the next and be successful in all of them. However, if you want to be a performer and only a performer, then you're probably not going to enjoy working front of house or working in the props department or wherever because you'll always keep thinking about, I wish I could be a performer. And then you won't enjoy the work you're actually doing, which goes for every industry, I think, but particularly for this one. I think a lot of people do work in areas that aren't maybe the right ones for them just to be close to the action, which is fine to a certain extent, but you've got to know that there are people out there who really want to do these jobs. So it's also not fair to them if you cling on to a job that you're not really enjoying.
That's so good, so true. Thank you so much. The not serious question is, if you weren't doing what you're doing, what would you do?
Oh God, okay. Quick top 3. I would work in a bookshop, work in a flower shop. Oh shit, I said 3. What else? Oh yeah, maybe a bakery or something. Just something really grounding, I think. Something with not so much drama.
Well, there's still so much drama in cooking. Very well chosen. And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh dear God, I have no idea. I got asked this question about 5 years ago and I would never have guessed that I would be still freelancing, that I would still be working in stage management and company management now. And I think it's one of those exciting industries that you can predict as much as you want, but you're never going to end up there. You're going to end up somewhere completely different and it'll be incredible and you will never be able to foresee it. So I'm quite excited to find out where I'll be in 5 years, but I have no idea where it's going to be.
Which is, I think, the 99% of artists, performers. That's a terrible, terrible question. But a last question. Yeah. Let's go back to Mimi Consulting, because that's what I do. I have to sell my product. Mimi Consulting aims to give to performing artists some business advices. Do you think that with all we just said, that it's important for professionals in this industry to be able to do some business talking, and why?
Yeah, look, I think I touched on this earlier. Seeing as most of us don't have a manager or, some of you might have an agent, but that's probably as far as it goes, you have to promote yourself. You have to sell your product, which in this case is you. So you have to know what makes you stand out, but you also have to know the whole business side. You have to know how to handle your financials. You have to know who to contact and where to get you advice. And these are all the basics that don't sound like much, but they will really make a difference to your career. And also they will make you feel a lot more in control of your career, because I think half the problem with freelancing especially is that you feel very much not in control, because you're so dependent on people giving you jobs. You're so dependent on people liking you and liking what you do and your style of work. But actually, you need to at least be in control of how you manage your career and how you manage your life around that. Because let's face it, our work does take up a lot of time and does take up a massive part of our lives. So if we don't feel in control of that, it quickly moves into other parts of our life where we then also don't feel in control. So I think it's very important to just know the basics and know where to find information. Yeah, so I think you've tapped into a good niche there, Mimi.
Katharina, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here with me. We are in Circular Quay. It's an amazing night, and I really hope to see you soon. Thank you, Katharina.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.